Hello, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about Netreo products, specifically how we're thinking about the future and where we are going. And I'll start by introducing myself. So I started my career in software engineering. Specifically, when I started, I was doing network-focused software engineering. And even more specifically, my first job out of college was writing SNMP-based network management software. I'd already had 4 internships by that point. 2 were network management related, and 2 were an early email application that worked on an X25 public data network, where we were porting software from a PDP-11 to a tandem nonstop. So you could say my experience goes back a little while. So in my engineering days, I also wrote other kinds of software like desktop management and software asset management, as well as some IP multicast-based streaming video solutions. I got my MBA through an evening MBA program and became a management consultant working for a company that later got bought by PwC, and also ran my own consulting business for a very, very long time. And my consulting time in both of those places was heavily skewed toward services to both IT organizations and software organizations, and in particular, more IT than software, but it did include both. And the type of projects I did were anything from system selections and implementations to big organizational transformations to helping leaders set strategies and measure operational performance and improve it, as well as like doing failure analysis for core authority issues that they hadn't figured out, what's the key issue and how to solve it and how to drive improvements. So it was a lot of analytical work, where I had to deeply understand the organization I was working with and help them be successful. And also key to that was helping my clients have their success be visible to executives and their stakeholders. So the combination of my prior experience gives kind of a 360-degree view from the software engineering part itself to core infrastructure things like network devices and servers and clouds and all of that, to IT organization needs and the needs of business stakeholders of IT. So kind of a mix there, and I think it does bring a lot to what I'm doing here. So one of the things that I've been trying to do in my time here is to really get better acquainted with our customers. And I know that's a good thing for every company to do. You should understand who uses your software and how they use it. It seems obvious. For me, the way I work is I really want to get to where I understand what a day in the life of our various user types and partners and customers look like. I try to envision sitting in your chair. What are my problems? What do I need to do this week? What is going to be asked of me and why? And the more we can get to an understanding of that view, what's life like in your chair, the more we can anticipate how to help you in the best way possible. So that's something that our product team is working hard on. And some of you may have already had conversations with us or potentially interactions with us through our ideas portal. But it really is an emphasis for us. How do we deliver what you need in a way that's really useful for you? That extends not only to how we decide what capabilities to implement, but also how we define user experiences for that, how we create and supply documentation that also anticipates what you need to know and when you need to know it. So we are definitely focused on these things. It will be a journey, but as they say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and we are definitely on this journey. And when we talk about customers throughout this conversation today, we really mean both partners and customers, as well as internal customers, to be clear. Okay, so why guiding principles? For me, I like to have a grand philosophy that guides the work. You need some overarching principles that can be agreed upon so that at each moment when each of us can make a decision, we can reference back to those principles and have them help guide our decisions. So I look at it as being kind of like a North Star to guide us. So that's what I want to focus on today. What are the themes that guide our future from a product perspective that will carry us forward into the future? Okay, so why guiding principles? Well, obviously, resources are always constrained. There are always more requests for things to do than there are time or people to do them. So really, it just helps us set that North Star to choose among different paths on our journey and to decide what the journey should look like. So I'm going to talk about these as two different things today. I'm going to talk about product principles and design principles. So it kind of breaks down into what is important for our product to be, products to be and to do, versus how do we optimally deliver those features and experiences. So you look at kind of what are the strategic areas for development, what kind of values are there for our product, how can we empower our customers as being about the product, and things like the UI and aesthetics and the overall user experience being some of the design principles. So that's kind of how we break it down. So if we talk about product principles first, this is, how are we going to go about building products that support our customers and partners, not just today, but into the future, because their operations and their technologies will also evolve and we'll have to keep up. So we want to build products that will support our customers, not only now, but into the future. And I'm going to walk through a short set of these principles. And we'll do 5 product principles, and then followed in the next section, we're going to talk about 5 core design principles. Okay, so the first principle is to be open. And what I mean by that is a few things. One is on extensibility, in the terms of like being able to add new resource types and device types to monitor something new that wasn't already being monitored before, whether that's adding on because you bought a new type of device, or adding on to the base set of stuff that comes out of the box, but to easily configure the system to add new things and extend the monitoring to other things. So it should be straightforward. And it shouldn't matter whether it's something kind of traditional, like an S&MP monitored device, or something more modern that requires API-based polling. So a few of the things we're going to be able to do is to improve what's included out of the box, and improve how easy it is to share and reuse prior work, whether it's our prior work or yours. So for example, to kind of package things up, download a good package of settings with everything you need and have it actually work without a whole lot of manual work for you. Think of it as more of like a plug and play type approach, so that you don't have to invent, right? So that you can have something easy to build. And I include in that category of extensibility, really installability, like to get from nothing to going should not be hard and should not be time consuming. So extending on that theme is really the idea of DIY, do it yourself. So it shouldn't have to require us to do it or engineers to do something. It really should put the power in the hands of our partners, our customer admins, and other folks to be able to configure the system how you want it, easily add capabilities and device monitoring and other things. So the more that you can do on your own without too much complexity, the better. And then the third part of this that I'll talk about is really open standards. And of course, we've been around for 20 years. S&P has been around longer than that. As I said, I started my career a while ago, and it, my first job after college was S&P based network management. But also there are new things like the emerging area of open telemetry, open metrics, things like that. So we are looking at those kinds of things to be able to ingest data from anything. And those open standards have applicability across our platforms. And there's a session later today showing a proof of concept of open telemetry ingestion into our prefix application performance monitoring product. So openness, that's the first standard. Okay. Let's talk about everywhere. So we want to be able to monitor everything. And you can attend the Monitor Everything with Netreo session later today with our senior product manager, Chris Sternberg, and he can add some additional flavor around that. But we're really talking about here is everything from traditional infrastructure, what Netreo's monitored since day one of its existence, to cloud resources, SD-WAN, applications and services, endpoints and experiences, etc. So we have some later sessions on cloud monitoring and APM as well. But if it's core infrastructure, whether physical or logical, and worth monitoring, then we want to be part of the solution. Okay, so third principle is secure. In this day and age, security is paramount. We all know that because major security breaches happen, and when they happen, they are big, big news. To be secure doesn't just require the right encryption level. It requires the right corporate culture, practices, and security by design from the start. And I'm not going to mention any competitors by name here, but I will talk about Netreo. We really have done a lot of work over the last year and change. And we have our SOC 2 Type 2 on the Netreo platform, and we're working toward it on the Retrace APM platform. All of our product lines have earned Bureau Code Verified Team recognition, and we're actively looking at FedRAMP certification. And we are continuously improving the security of our software and practices. We will continue to do that. And we have added some security features this year, for example, to support longer password lengths for those companies that have policies around password lengths of a certain size that were longer than what we had previously supported. So things like that. We will continue to evolve the product along these dimensions. So there's our kind of certification bits, and stay tuned, there will be more. Okay, third principle is user focus. And so really to be better for our targeted customers, partners, internal and external users. In the day one keynote, if you heard that, I talked about listening, working really hard to understand the needs of our users, whether those users are customer administrators, customers, customer end users, partners, or internal users and stakeholders. And we talked earlier about really trying to develop a day in the life of level of understanding of each of these categories of users. So this is a key focus for us. You will see this in conversations with us. You will see it in how we actively seek out input and feedback on new capabilities that we're designing. You'll see it in how we respond to ideas that are submitted in our ideas portal, which is ideas.netreo.com for outside folks, for non-Netreo folks. And there's a separate one for Netreo employees that we've provided elsewhere, and you can reach out to me if you've forgotten. At any rate, we will continue to work here and keep developing this deep level of understanding and keep being better. Okay, so the next principle I want to talk about is data intelligence. So I'll tell this by a story. One of the early conversations we had after I came on with one of our customers, we were talking about a particular area in the system. And the bit of feedback that we heard from this customer was related to the data in this part of the system. And the customer made the remark that we know you have the data. Why can't we get it in a report? So this was a need to, get the data in a way that they could make use of, do more analysis of, share, chart, whatever. And there was a lot of frustration because we have lots of data about what's going on really in your infrastructure environment on our core Netreo platform, but we had some gaps in how we were sharing it. So, so there's a lot of things you can do with the power of this data. And really what we're trying to do is actually give you that power. That's fundamentally what we're talking about. Whether it's predictive, things to help you plan, looking at trends. So think about capacity planning as a use case. I can see that this trend is going up. You might think about doing something, maybe within this time window for things that, where we can tell you a trend, but we can't do anything for you. For example, if you needed more hardware at some point. There are things in the area of responsiveness where maybe there is something we can do and some self-healing that we can promote. And the other bit is really just to help you leverage the power of data in however you need to, whether it's reporting to your executive leadership, to your business stakeholders, to your, say, customer base or whatever to put the data in your hands for reporting, decision making, as well as kind of understanding configuration. So we have, so one of the things here is the proactiveness, and one is kind of intelligence to help you do stuff. But really, what we're trying to do is put the power of data in your hands. Okay, so now I want to turn to the topic of design principles, which is designing experiences in an optimal manner to help you be as effective as possible in your use of the system. So these are the guiding principles for how we design software for that purpose. And again, when we say users, we mean customer administrators, customer end users, partners, and internal users. Okay, so the first principle under here is fewer clicks. And this is a pretty simply expressed principle. I shouldn't have to click and mouse around everywhere to do something simple. I should be able to get to the place I want with a minimum number of clicks. I should be able to accomplish a series of steps in a typical workflow with a minimum number of steps. So if you think about what complex looks like in contrast, it's kind of like, well, first I need to go over here, click on this thing, go into another screen, select something else, go into another screen, make a choice, save, go to a completely separate place, pick something, click something, go somewhere else, edit, save. If that set of steps was something that was an essential task in a workflow that you did every day, that could be kind of annoying. So if it can be predicted that I want to do a certain set of things together because they naturally belong together in a workflow, then they belong together in the user experience. And that kind of goes back to really understanding the customer and what they're trying to do and what their day looks like and what they need to do, and building the system to support that. So it goes back to understanding users and their jobs. We have some places that we're making improvements for sure. We are making improvements. For example, if I'm in a place in the software that I use often and I might want to add something where I am, don't make me go somewhere else to do it. If I can be expected to think, well, gee, I should be able to change the configuration of the thing I'm looking at. I want to change the configuration of the thing I look at. Let me get to the configuration right there. Because after I fix my configuration, I want to go back and see the effect of what I've done. So if I have to, if I'm here and I say I want to do something, then I have to go over there and change it and then come back to where I was. It's disruptive to what could have been a natural workflow. So of course, my ability to configure something hinges on me having the permission to do that. But if you have the permission and that's a natural workflow for you to do, we should make it flow. So fewer clicks is a core design principle for us going forward. Okay, so the next one is data accessibility. And the way that this principle came up was with respect to reports that show data in tables. There were some places that I could see data in a report, but I couldn't get the data out in a convenient way. So tabular data, for example, can be really useful to do pretty much whatever you want with it. If you can get it out in CSV form, for example, you can slice and dice the data whatever you want. You can create your own charts and graphs for presentations. For example, if you have to report on how your organization has been performing to your business stakeholders. Perhaps your success is even measured based on some of the results. So that was the first data-related design principle that we put in place since I got here, that tabular data should be available in tabular form. If I can see it in a table, in a report, I want to get it in a table. But additionally, we will continue to improve filtering, sorting, searching, including addressing places where you can only filter results after the first search is run, which can create performance issues in large data sets. So this principle sums up as letting our users access the data they need and do what they need to do with it. Okay, so this next principle is a clean, consistent UI. And what do we mean by that? So let me tell a little bit of a story about how this principle came up. It came up in a few different directions. One had to do with the use of color. We were observing that there was so much color in some places that it actually distracted the eye from what was important on the screen. For example, if something in a critical state would show as red, then if there isn't anything in that state, then showing a bright red color for 0 things is unnecessarily distracting. So we're making some changes to ensure that color is used more effectively to draw the eye to areas needing attention. We also observed some inconsistencies in icons, for example, a few different ways to show an edit function. So we are correcting those. We actually have a pretty good UX designer who's well integrated into our product team, and he has a really, really good eye for these things. So some of the other aspects of this design dimension are predictability of the system behavior. For example, the idea that you shouldn't surprise your users. Like the behavior of the system shouldn't surprise them. It should be predictable and not jarring. As well as having meaningful feedback in error situations. So I can see what the error is. I can get appropriate help and documentation to understand what the error is and act on it. So that's that principle. And then on the next one, we want to talk about a design principle, having them designed to user workflows. What we mean by that is that if we consider how the work gets done, and we try to support those flows in a better way. And again, when I say that, I don't just mean customer users, but also customer administrators, partner users, and internal users. For example, if I'm looking at a list of issues, it would be natural for me to want to click into one and find out more about it so that I can work on solving it. So if I'm looking at something, I should be able to, and I see a problem, I should be able to dig in and find out more. Another example is if I'm looking at a configured item in the system and I have rights to change the configuration, one might assume that I could want to edit the configuration. So rather than sending me somewhere else to go edit it, save, and then come back, I should be able to get to the configuration from where I'm looking at, assuming I have the permissions. So taking that into the future, if I'm looking at some trend data and I can see an upward trend in something, perhaps I could get a sense for when in the future I might want to take action on something, for example, for capacity planning. Or maybe when I'm looking at trend information, it could suggest to me what some potential actions could be that I could be preparing to take on the trend. So here, we see this is going up. Here's some things you might think about. That would be a nice thing. So essentially, it's understanding the work and designing in a flow-based way for it. Okay, so another principle is good defaults. So this is an area that will get a little clearer as we touch various parts of the system and add new capabilities. But we've observed a few places where it would be really beneficial to have some default or suggested settings that could then be tweaked. Other things that would be helpful, especially when configuring complex areas of the system, would be good contextual help on choices that you can make where you are and why you might make one choice versus another. And there could be places where it just doesn't make sense to suggest a default, but if there's something logical we could suggest and then let you tweak from there with some guidance, then we'll want to do that and we'll look to do more of that over time. So I'm going to recap what we're talking about here. The principles guiding our path forward essentially boils down to 10 principles in total. And the idea of being open and extensible, the ability to cover everything that is core physical or logical infrastructure, the idea of being secure, especially important these days, the idea of putting the power of data in our users' hands, and the focus on our users at the forefront of our thinking, not just features and functions, but deep understanding of their jobs and needs. Okay. And then we want to design it so that the system does not have an excess of clicks. Related things are found together. You can get to them easily. We want to ensure that UI features are designed with data accessibility in mind. We want to provide a clean, consistent user experience where colors and fonts draw attention where needed, and similar things are rendered consistently. We want to design our software around the natural workflows of the various users under various usage scenarios. And we want the system to be designed with good defaults in mind. They can be changed, but our users won't start with nothing. They can start with something reasonable, some reasonable suggestions, and then they can tune on their own from there. And those are the key principles driving us forward. As I mentioned, having a framework set of principles provides a guide and helps us make decisions on priorities and sequencing, and helps us make sure we're delivering high quality, usable software. So that was the sum of it, of what's guiding our path forward. If you have ideas, again, for non-Netreo folks, please use ideas.netreo.com. And for those Netreons that may be listening, if you have forgotten the internal link, please reach out to us and we'll be happy to share with you. If you want to collaborate with us on some new product areas, please reach out if you're interested. And we would love to share the journey with you and have you be closely involved. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Nugget conference. Thank you.
Running.